If you enjoy listening to The Edge, support them by subscribing to The Edge on iTunes, Stitcher, and you can listen through the iHeart Radio app. Get busy listening.
This is The Edge.
The advantage it means.
They let guy just spit on me for no reason.
That's horrible.
Is there some comfort in uncertainty, do you think?
You're a degenerate.
Because Australian Shepherds need action.
Wow. Yeah.
This is The Edge.
That's a self-loathing term that I use.
Oh, got it.
You're listening to The Edge with Mark Thompson.
Welcome to this episode of The Edge. I am Mark. We're joined for a bulk of this show by a comedian named Tehran, like the city in Iran, Tehran. And he is too cool for school, man. He is so cool, this guy. He is part black, part Persian, as you'll learn, and that combination of ethnicities gives him perspective on all sorts of things. He's very smart, funny. I've been trying to get him on the show for a while. I'm so glad that he's here in this episode. We're also joined for that conversation by our iHeartMedia sister, Lisa Foxx. And so it'll be Lisa, myself, and Tehran again for the bulk of this episode. We'll start with the Fast 15, Michael Shure, politics and more. Michael Shure is a remarkable political reporter and political analyst, and it is election day as we record our conversation with Michael Shure. So we'll get a preliminary perspective from him, and then we'll get into greater depth the results of those elections, into those repercussions in our next episode in an even bigger way. Thank you for subscribing. You know, subscriptions are so important. I mean, they keep us alive in the iTunes universe and the Stitcher universe and all these different places that provide the podcasts. By subscribing and by downloading our show, you help keep our show toward the top of these different queues. And I've mentioned it to you before, we don't do advertising. I'll never do advertising on this show. You won't hear me read some live commercial for anything, but I do need your support. And so if you go to our website, edge-show.com, you'll see little Amazon banners. If you click on one of them and you do your Amazon shopping through that link, it's the same Amazon, but they keep track of the fact that you click through our link, and as a result, they spin off a little bit of whatever you spend back to this show, so it helps us keep the lights on, pay producers, and pay production costs and webmasters and this kind of thing. We're a lean show, but we need your support, and thank you. A few of you who have actually hit the PayPal link and sent us money, even small amounts of money, and I appreciate it. Every dollar that you contribute to this show stays with this show. All right, Fast 15, Tehran, thanks for being here. Now, let's get on with the show.
This is The Edge.
Time for the Fast 15, politics and more. He's calling us from the road because he's a real journalist covering politics. He's our Michael Shure, everybody. Yes.
Hey,
wow.
Thank you.
Wow.
Well, that's nice to hear.
Yes, Michael, it's great to have you call in. Saddened to have to start with this grim subject matter, but another mass shooting, this one in Texas at a church, and the gunman killed 26 people, and he was a very troubled guy, as it turns out. He had a documented history of domestic violence. He was reported in an incident report as a danger to himself and others. He'd been caught sneaking firearms onto the Air Force base, and he fractured the skull of his child in one of these domestic disputes. He was discharged from military service, but all of these things related to his background never went into a database that anybody could recover, and as a result, he was able to purchase these weapons.
Yeah, and the one thing that you left out, Mark, that goes into something you talk about all the time, and it's one of the indicators for future violence, which is animal cruelty. He got a misdemeanor animal abuse charge in Colorado Springs in 2014 or 2015, and those sorts of things are signals. They're things that the people who study this stuff look at and see as indicative of future violence.
Those who are among the huge group in this country that feel that every American has the right to own many of these weapons that are semi-automatic and all the rest, they say, well, the problem here isn't the weapon. The problem is that the government didn't register the history of this guy.
Yeah, and I think that the cooperation that should exist and is mandated to exist to a degree between the armed forces and federal authorities was definitely looked over. And I think that one of the complications with all of this is if there were stricter gun laws in the first place, you wouldn't be crying about this necessarily today. But even without the gun laws that we are in absence of right now, you have to hold the military to a higher standard. If they're policing themselves on this, that's not good enough. There has to be somebody in a federal role who is looking into these things, who takes over the military information on a regular basis, so they're able to file this stuff away.
You're saying once this guy's convicted of these things, once it's been documented in this way, there has to be another way that there's another, if you will, oversight of the military to make sure it gets into that database.
Absolutely, or a periodic review, so that they go to the Air Force, and they say, all right, none of this happened, nothing happened in the past month. Okay, bye. We'll see you next month. Then they come back next month and they see that so and so did this. They then incorporate that information into their national database. And it sounds like a lot of government, but a lot of government in this case would have taken care of, we think, some of this.
Yeah, that's the other ding on this. I've heard from, again, those people who represent, I'm going to call it the I'm going to call it the right and please, everybody who is right of center, who doesn't necessarily sit with the gun lobbyists and all the rest, you'll pardon me, but just for sake of this discussion. And they say, look, you don't need more government. Here is evidence that the government doesn't work. I mean, the restriction that there is didn't come through because of a government failing.
Yeah, and the government has failed to put laws in that prevent the ownership of guns from law-abiding citizens. And when I say prevent, make it more difficult for people to live within the law, but at least vet the people that buy guns. Well, this adds another complication onto it, and one that may have resulted in the deaths of all these people in Texas.
Yeah. Well, this guy, and more is coming out about him, documented history of all this erratic behavior and violence. He bought 4 guns between 2014 and 2017. And again, because of the Air Force's failure to report it, we end up with another American Horror show. It's just a sad, sad thing.
Yeah.
I want to move on. There's certainly been a lot of discussion and will be more discussion about it. I'm sure we're going to return to this subject, quite unfortunately, just because of the nature of the beast. But there's
we'll turn to it. I mean, 2 of the worst 5 mass shootings in American history happened in the last 35 days. We will return to it. We'll unquestionably return to it. We return to it after schools are shot up, after racists walk into church in the South and do it, after a congressman is shot, after a congresswoman is shot. Everything that happens always brings us back to the same thing. I mean, yes, the Senate has scheduled a hearing on bump stocks, but bump stocks have nothing to do with it. I would rather, personally, see bump stocks go on forever because the bump stocks are not the problem we have in America. It's the easy access to the guns in the first place.
The other things that are going on with the president in Asia, the proposed tax legislation is churning and being discussed. It looks like a big corporate tax cut. You talked about that on this show before. And I want to hear about that in a second, but it happens at the same time that all this information is now coming out through these Paradise Papers about how all these corporations are already evading taxes by being set up in all of these different countries all around the world.
Yeah, the Appleby Corporation out of Bermuda and the Paradise Papers showing that the wealthiest people in the world, not just the wealthiest, the most powerful people. There were 3 former prime ministers of Canada, former queen of or the Queen Dowager, and I don't know what that is, of Jordan. Some of the wealthiest people and some of the most powerful were able to hide their money essentially by investing offshore, and the levels to which they're able to do it and to skirt the legal side of this, I mean, are pretty impressive at the very least. The whole idea was that behind it, and this was my favorite quote. It was something in the New York Times article about preserving the wealth from the ravages of litigation, which is also, these are things that are privileges of the rich, and it's laid bare.
Yeah, there's a global business strategy that includes hiding a lot of money, and that includes setting up their companies in all of these different places. So it's just funny to me that we're talking about how we can give these corporations and these large business owners, because, the new tax plan does not really favor the small business owner, but these large businesses a tax break to help invigorate the economy or continue to invigorate it, while it's all happening now, and we pull back the curtain and we say, hey, these guys are already, it seems, getting a pretty big break.
Yeah, absolutely. And why it's called the Appleby Fund is because it was named after Appleby, who was, I think, a British officer in the late 1800s, and he was an avowed and powerful opponent of taxation. That's why it's called the Applebee Fund. And all of their offices are in places like Bermuda and the Isle of Man and the Cayman Islands, among others, Shanghai, places with no taxation.
Yeah, $100 billion is the estimate in corporate tax revenue that's lost every year. $100 billion by this government because of these various situations that are set up all over the globe.
$100 billion. That's incredible.
So the state of that tax plan, which is going to be tough on the deficit and all the rest, can you handicap that right now, or is it just too early to say? And also, does it get hammered out at this point? In other words, will it look anything like it does now by the time they get done with it?
Well, I think the real telling part of this is what will Democrats do? The president is, when he returns, I will imagine, will go after a lot of Democrats because he's going to have some conservatives in the House who don't want anything to do with this House bill. And that's going to be a problem for it. And, you have the sort of moderate Republicans on the East Coast who have not favored this tax plan. It's going to be very difficult. Then you take it to the Senate, and the Senate's going to put forward their ideas that are not going to be in favor of what a lot of the most conservative members of the House think. So it's a while from getting done, but it's something that both, the White House and the Congress, especially members of the House, Republican members of the House, want to see happen to a degree because they need to go back to their district. If he continues to be an unpopular president by the time they're running for re-election next summer, they need to go back to their districts with some measure of accomplishment.
How about the Russia thing? The former Trump campaign foreign policy advisor.
You may have just coined Trampagne.
Yeah, the Trampagne advisor. Carter Page, he now says to Congress that he did speak privately with Russia's deputy prime minister and also several legislators. That was during a campaign-approved trip to Moscow before the election.
Well, he says that he told the Trump officials about that trip and that he promised insights from it.
My question is, there are at least 9 members of President Trump's campaign team or the White House staff that are now remembering direct contact with senior officials in Vladimir Putin's government. All right. And this is before he was elected president, Donald Trump. I'm asking about how important this is, or is this going to be just like the president's taxes that were never released? And at the end of the day, it's going to be, that's going on, but we're going to soldier on past it. Or is it going to be accompanied by charges because of the Robert Mueller investigation?
Well, that's what I was going to say, Mark. I mean, there's not a special or an independent prosecutor or an independent counsel looking at Trump's tax records. There is somebody who every day gets up in the morning with a team of people looking into this who has the power to bring charges. And I think that's the biggest part of this. I also think the integrity of the Attorney General is going to come under further question the longer this goes on. If the Mueller investigation proves, and if Carter Page comes out with more comments like these, and that means that Jeff Sessions lied to Congress during his confirmation hearings, and there won't be a lot of patience on the part of Democrats in Congress for that. Again, though, they don't have a lot of muscle on Capitol Hill right now. But if they continue to play defense on these sorts of things, it's going to be tough for Jeff Sessions.
What's happening with the president overseas? He's now talking about a possible deal with North Korea. He's gone from saber rattling for so long to telling North Korea they should take a deal.
Yeah, the answer to your first question is what's going on overseas on this Asian trip, and I don't know. I mean, I don't think anybody knows. The president has wavered, as you just said, on North Korea, and this new direction that he's going after saying that he's not going to have any kind of diplomacy with North Korea, a deal would imply diplomacy, so it's very hard. I mean, to hear him conciliatory about it is, I think, indicative to me that what happened in his conversations with Abe in Japan, and maybe as he's in South Korea, I think the people in that part of the world are saying this posture is not working. And so, Donald Trump can just change his mind at the drop of a hat because it doesn't matter. And he could come into this, strike a deal, which, is something that he said he wouldn't do, be successful at it, and say that that's what he was trying to do all along. I don't know if that's the case. I think everybody would like to see this simmer down, though.
At the same time, there's this bizarre, I say bizarre because I presume it was unexpected, consolidation of power in Saudi Arabia. And they've taken all these rich guys, they've locked them in the Ritz-Carlton there.
Yeah, that's, ironic. Oh, my God, they're under arrest at the Ritz-Carlton. Although for Prince Talawil, the most interesting part of that is he owns a number of Four Seasons, which is the biggest competition to Ritz-Carlton. So he's being forced to stay at the Ritz-Carlton when he owns a lot of Four Seasons.
Yeah, I understand. It's going into his Yelp review. I think only 4 stars is what they expect. from him on this one. But
Right.
again, just a bizarre situation that is made more bizarre because as it's being talked about, you realize that all this Saudi money, I'm talking about money from the guys who were locked up at the Ritz-Carlton, go into American companies. I mean, big tech companies. Everything from Apple to Disney is fueled by a lot of Saudi wealth.
Yeah, especially from this one figure, Talawil, who was one of the princes. He wasn't the crown prince, but I don't think he was crazy about the crown prince, and I think the crown prince found this out, and look where he is. He's stuck at the Ritz. But yes, these sorts of changes in the kingdom have far-reaching effects, especially in the West, where so much investment money has gone in to companies, like you said, in the United Kingdom and the United States, among many other countries. And it makes you wonder what happens, and is there too much consolidation of wealth? And I think most people would say yes.
And lastly, in that same area, the Saudi Arabians are kind of on a bit of a war footing right now because they're talking about these missiles that came in from Yemen, and they consider that a hostile act. I mean, it probably is a hostile act from most. And those missiles come from where, Michael Shure?
The missiles from Yemen, they're coming from Iran.
Exactly.
And that is problematic for all of the diplomacy that's going on in that part of the world. It was talked about, too, when Trump visited the Middle East earlier this year in May, and he went through Saudi Arabia and then went on to Israel. This is something that they've known was likely to happen. And now I think with the consolidation of power, the change in power there, but the consolidation in power in Saudi Arabia, I think they're striking a different kind of tone in Yemen, and that's what the world is watching. But the president of the United States has said that he supports what went on there, and I think that he knows that Benjamin Netanyahu, without having to say it, supports it as well.
So will we see a war there?
Oh, boy, you're asking a tough question. I don't, my guess is no. My guess is that the Saudis are going to find a way to work and build a coalition that stops this. But, I'm not the right person to talk about that. I can tell you, about the December 12th runoff in Alabama, but whether or not there'll be a war in the Middle East, I don't know, but I'm certainly watching it pretty carefully.
Let me ask you about Election Day, and then I'll let you go. As we're talking, this is Election Day in many places. Any important races we should be watching for?
I think there are a few important races. I mean, first of all, the Virginia governor's race is important because it's a test of Donald Trump's populist politics. Ed Gillespie, the former Republican National Committee chair, is running there. He's from New Jersey originally, but he is playing a lot of the games, the political games that worked so well for Donald Trump without invoking Trump's name. His opponent's the Lieutenant Governor Ralph Northam, who has moved to the center rather than to the left, which you see a lot of Democratic candidates doing. And it's in an effort to cast Gillespie as one of Trump's minions and play off the fact that Trump is not popular in Virginia. Of all the states he did win and upset, Hillary Clinton still won Virginia in 2016. So I think it's one to watch just to see how that dynamic plays out. And other candidates, more importantly, are going to go to school on this race, on how to run it. It also has an impact for the most progressive Democrats, because the most progressive Democrats were not wild about Ralph Northam. He beat Tom Perriello, who is ostensibly their candidate in a primary, and Northam is veering away from some of that politic right now. But I think that he's going to win. We'll know certainly before this airs, but I do think that Northam will win, and I think that it's because of the type of state that Virginia is becoming more than the kind of race he's running. So we'll have to see how that works.
Last thing, I really will let you go. Donna Brazile dropped a huge bomb as she has written this book and has gone on this book tour, and in essence has said a couple of things that are hugely controversial, one of which was she was considering Joe Biden when she saw Hillary Clinton's candidacy as sort of this moribund offering, and that is replacing Hillary Clinton with Joe Biden. And she also talked about the fact that the Clintons had control of the money there with the DNC. Can you comment on those things and how? Give us some perspective on that.
Here's I think it's a longer conversation than we tend to have, but the Biden thing doesn't bother me as much. I mean, it would have bothered me more if it had come out around that time when it would have been an unseemly conversation to have. It's actually kind of interesting. I think it's interesting that the thoughts that go into, I guess what people think about after a candidate faints or is having health problems of any noticeable kind, what happens? And I think that's interesting. They were even thinking about putting Joe Biden there at all, and that they wouldn't have gone to Tim Kaine or they wouldn't have gone to Bernie Sanders.
Thank you. I'm wondering why they wouldn't have gone to Bernie Sanders. I thought that was one of the more controversial aspects to this statement.
Well, I don't know. I mean, Bernie Sanders lost, and he lost pretty badly in the primary. So I don't know that, I don't know that you go to the second place person. I think you either go for a refresher. And clearly, you don't go for anyone because she was fine and she ran the race.
And by the way, why do you go for anyone? Is it up to Donna Brazile and a bunch of other guys, smoking fat cigars in a back room to decide? And the answer is yes, kind of, isn't it?
It kind of is. I mean, the parties are made that way. It's not just the Democratic Party that in an emergency health case, they can put somebody up to the Democratic Central Committee who doesn't have to face the voters but has to face the Democrats. I don't think it would have been as easy to just say, okay, we'll take this person. But there would have been one person they would have had to select in that case. I happen to think that there would have been other voices in the room that would have challenged Donna Brazile and said, hey, there have been some Sanders voices, some voices for Tim Kaine. There would have been voices for other people. But I just think, on just a general, because I like politics so much, I think it's a fascinating sort of what if. And to know that those conversations happen is kind of cool. To go to the other part of what you were asking about with the Clinton money, there are a lot of ways to look at this. I think everybody is right. I forget whether you're defending Hillary or defending Bernie Sanders. This wasn't really necessarily about Bernie Sanders. Hillary Clinton and her campaign especially helped bail out the Democratic Party. And in exchange, there was some quid pro quo. I really think that at the end of the day, the person who comes away from this looking the worst is Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who was the former chairman of the party, who let it get, going into an election year, let the finances of that party get so depleted that they needed a rescue mission like the Clinton campaign was giving them. The other side, if you are the Clinton campaign, you're saying, look, we're coming in. This is not out of the ordinary, as Howard Dean, who once ran the DNC, said. This is what happens. It's standard operating procedure. It's also, the Sanders people have one thing against them, although a lot of what their arguments say, I think, are valid. But one of the things they have against them, Mark, is that he's not a Democrat, right? The DNC want a Democrat to win. Now, you can say it doesn't matter. He was running as a Democrat. He caucuses with the Democrats. That's fine. That's fair. But he's not. And in 2015, he wasn't. And those people were looking to get a Democrat elected. I'd be much more upset if I was a Martin O'Malley supporter than a Bernie Sanders supporter.
Well, we'll discuss this more when you get back. And obviously, as you said, there are a lot of facets. And boy, Donna Brazile has really come out shooting.
I want to lengthen this by about 30 seconds because one of the things that I find most interesting about this is it's a general point, which is, people do this to sell books. I don't fault Donna Brazile for doing it. She's telling some of the most interesting parts of the story. I wonder if it really sells books. I'd much rather know that there's a surprise in there when I read it. And this goes back to Scott McClellan when he was the White House press secretary. He came out and wrote a book about, I think it was called What Happened, which is funny because that was what Hillary Clinton's book was called. But then why do you want to read the book anymore? How much better can it get than the two nuggets we already know from Donna Brazile? So how is she selling books by doing this?
Yeah, I guess you want to read all the details around it, but you're right. They always do this on the book tours. They give you the big nuggets,
Right, right.
Yeah,
I'd rather say that, there's some big nuggets in here. Okay, I'm going to read it.
Right. Don't tell me about the threesome. Leave it on page 58 so I can just happen on it.
And please don't tell me about the one at the DNC because I don't want to know
That's not the one I want to see either. Michael, thank you for taking a minute and calling in. You can see Michael on I-24, and you can hear Michael on this show weekly with the Fast 15, and you can contact Michael on Twitter at Michael Shure, and Shure is spelled S-H-U-R-E, at Michael Shure. Michael Shure, everybody! Yes! I know! Oh, my God.
Thank you.
You're listening to The Edge. Join us on the web at edge-show.com.
And now our conversation with comedian Tehran, joined by Lisa Foxx from the iHeartRadio family.
Lisa, DJ Lisa Foxx.
We're so lucky because here at the iHeartRadio network, there are people roaming the halls, and once in a while I can corral one of them to come join us. And
sometimes you find them passed out in the halls,
It is true.
Or they slept over from last night after a crazy wild night.
I just feel as though you listening should meet some of the people who are associated with this amazing empire that is iHeartRadio. And one of those people is DJ Lisa Foxx. Yes.
Can I clap for myself? Is that
She's
weird?
a big deal. No, I like it. It's very
No.
Hollywood to clap for yourself.
There's two X's, so I'm fun.
Yeah,
So I just bring the fun, you know?
You do have two X's on your name.
I do.
I don't think we're telling any secrets, and people who listen to the show are not only here in Los Angeles and Southern California, but they're all over the country, and some of them, we've even gotten some emails from elsewhere in the world.
And I'm on in San Francisco daily as well.
That's what I was getting at.
Yeah.
You don't just do a show for L.A., San Francisco, so how do you do that?
It's actually great exercise. I actually do it from two different studios, but at the same time. So it's kind of crazy. It's one of those things where I wish I could kind of tape behind the scenes because people think, oh, you could just tape ahead of time. And it's like, no, I actually run back and forth and do the breaks, for in LA, we're on at this time. And then I run back to the other studio and I'm on in San Francisco at that time. So I literally run back and forth for 5 hours. So
okay,
thank
wait a
God,
minute.
because I got to keep the weight down,
Wait a minute.
Got to keep this foxy figure.
I don't think I understand. So the show, let's say, begins at 10 a.m.
Yeah, both shows are from 10 to 3.
Okay.
So both shows are totally separate and original. The music is similar. We're similar format. So it's Star 101.3 in San Francisco, 104.3 My FM here in Los Angeles. And then essentially, but both shows are very different. So I'm speaking directly to different audiences, but throughout the day, off and on, just running back and forth to two different studios.
Okay, so how are the shows different? Is your style different, or is it just the content that's different?
Like, do I use different voices?
Yeah,
No. Hi, you guys.
Like
I'm
one's
on
a
in
hip hop
LA right
station.
now.
Yo, all right, here.
Hi, I'm on in Los Angeles, and no, I'm just me. It's just a different. I'm saying 104.3 My FM. Kelly Clarkson, she'll be here at the radio station this Friday. We're doing a big event. Then I'm on in San Francisco. Hey, it's Star 101.3. Now we're giving away Pink. You want to see Pink live at the Oracle in Oakland? Call now for those tickets. So it's two totally separate shows.
I get it.
I use different voices. You're funny.
Well, no, I just was curious. So
yo, what up, Bay Area? I'm on street up in here. San Francisco, baby.
Yeah.
I mean, I did used to hang with MC Hammer back in the day. So
you what with MC Hammer?
Used to hang out with him.
What does that mean?
Hang out like back when Hammer was Hammer time.
Were you hanging out, or were you hanging out?
No, he was very married. He's a sweetheart. And
Is he?
But we did our radio station in San Jose at the time. We did a lot of events together, and he had a lot of events at his very nice house. That was back in the heyday. I mean, his house was
don't touch this, right?
It looked like a mini White House in the hills of Fremont. God bless him. And it was like the big H on the gate that would open up a windy road, and the most beautiful house in all of Northern California was MC Hammer's house back in the day. He
had a fortune, and then he employed a lot of people.
A lot of friends.
Yeah, a lot of friends and family.
Yeah.
And ate up all that money doing that.
Well, and I think, I think a lot of artists learned from even just the days of the VH1 Behind the Music, because those artists told their stories as to not only how a lot of them were taken advantage of by managers and record labels back in the day, but also that they just didn't know. You think the money's going to last for forever, and you just don't know. You don't have the right guidance around you. And he really was a sweet, genuine guy who just was trying to take care of all of his friends. So yeah, he rolled with a posse of 30 people. And they didn't necessarily have jobs. But he was trying to take care of everybody. He just didn't know. He didn't have the right people around him, or maybe he did, and he just didn't listen.
Well, let me say this in fairness to MC Hammer.
We tweet now.
The world is set up so that none of us have any idea what it would be like to have the kind of money that he had at that time. And I guess what I'm getting at is you probably instinctively want to help all these people. I know I would try to take care of everybody I knew needed money. And that's probably not the way to handle a big pot of money when you have a finite amount.
Well, like when they say, isn't there a TV show that's about all these people who win the lottery? You think it's your dream to win the lottery, it'll solve all your problems, but people who win the lottery end up like everything goes to hell in a handbasket because of all the things that they buy and how they spend and all the trouble that burden of that money brings. So they initially have good intentions, but next thing you know, they're buying yachts and white tigers and mansions, and they're like, I bought an island, and it's just it all goes to hell fast.
Yeah.
And we think money solves all the problems, but it doesn't really work like that. So.
Once he lost all the money, and it's cool that you are still in touch with him, was he humbled by it, or was he broken by it, or what happened to him?
I'm sure it was a long process, so it's not like I was talking to him during all of that, but I just know that he's found God and he's working again in radio. Actually, he was doing radio up in the Bay Area for a long time, and he's just very much he's just a lot more down to earth and grounded, and he does a lot of great work, and people in the Bay Area just love him so much. So I know, like the Warriors playoffs and all the big games.
So he's like a personality in the Bay Area
but he's
still.
so
very
beloved.
much.
Yeah, because that's part of his story was
He started
was
as a bat boy for the A's.
Yeah, and just people in the Bay love him, and he's a big part of the Bay Area success stories. You always want to root for people from your hometown. Like that's our people.
Yeah.
So,
who else came out? Well, a lot of great artists came out of the Bay Area, but I was trying to think.
Metallica are big Bay Area faves. Metallica.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Huey Lewis, Metallica, Bonnie Raitt.
Smash Mouth from San Jose. Smash Mouth.
I mean, The Dead. You can go on and on. But I guess I was getting at that time was somebody who went from rags to riches to rags. I was trying to think, was that band like Digital Underground or something like that from the East Bay, Oakland? Oakland turned out during that time in the 80s, there were those kind of flashes, man, and then they just flashed away.
Well, that was also during a time where there was a lot of people with those one-hit wonders. I mean, there's still quote-unquote one-hit wonders, but there was a lot, back in the 80s and 90s for sure. I remember I had a gal that I went to high school with, Tabitha, I'm blanking on her last name, but she was in Oaktown 357. And they had a couple great songs that we loved, because she's like, that's Tabitha, we went to high school. And she had a song on the radio that we played back in the day. And so sometimes, those moments kind of come and go, and you're able to ride the wave and come back and conquer. And otherwise, it's a moment in time of your life. You're like, hey, I had a hit song on the radio.
Sure. When I first moved to L.A., the lady who helped me with my real estate, looking for a place to live, was this woman, Sharona, I forget what her last name was.
Sharona Alpern, because I almost bought real estate from her, and I thought, isn't that funny? You have the same name as that song.
Yeah, and I said the same thing, and she said, that song was about me. I said,
it's
what?
Her.
My Sharona, the Knack song?
My real estate agent. Yeah, she's a cool lady. I talked to her on the phone, but I almost bought a condo from the Sharona.
Yeah, it was one of the first brushes with something famous or something well known than when I got to L.A. Lisa, please help me welcome Tehran, everybody.
I'll help you welcome myself. Yes. I just feel great for being here and making it.
In his bathrobe.
Tehran, I am going to post a picture of you in your bathrobe and your kind of super cash look. It works, though, somehow. I couldn't sell that look. I'd look like an old white man who just, you know what I mean? But you, because you're black and
That's
cool.
how it works. And I didn't make this rule. Black guys, look, you want to talk about white privilege all you want, sure. But when it comes to swag and outfits and everything, black privilege does exist. Look at Michael Jackson. There was no way anyone else was going to get away with half the stuff he did. And I'm not talking about kids. I'm literally talking about his outfits.
His crazy outfits.
Yeah. Exactly.
But you're not wearing slippers, though, with it.
Yeah, he is. He's wearing.
Of course I am.
Do we wake you from your nap, or what the hell?
No, this is the thing. I'm always at home everywhere I go. I'm just going to wear a bathrobe. I'm the bathrobe heartthrob.
Self-proclaimed bathrobe.
You're the
bathrobe. My life, and especially, I am now that R.I.P. Hef. It's just me.
Somebody's got to take the mantle.
Honor.
We got to represent
in his name.
There we go.
Sure. How do you guys know each other?
I saw our guest on stage, and I just thought he was so funny. So I met him outside and just said, "Hey, I want to introduce myself. I'm nobody, but you're funny."
Comedy store or where? Laugh Factory.
Laugh Factory.
Laugh Factory.
Mm-hmm.
Laugh Factory. Mark is a
comedian
cool
groupie.
White guy. I was going to say cool white guy. He said tomato. He's a cool white guy. And I was like, I felt the energy. This guy
Well, and how do you not
soul.
respond to someone with such a commanding
voice? Are you
voice?
mocking my voice? Okay.
I'd like you on my show. You're going to do it with that voice. You don't say, if he was like, hi, will you be on my radio show?
But I didn't really ask you to be on the show that night.
You did not.
Think. No.
Oh.
You did not.
You just asked for his number?
What we did bond over something really weird, and here's what it was. I grew up in Washington, D.C., and Tehran also a D.C. kid.
Okay.
But even more than that, this is what blew me away. In D.C., there's a show. It's called It's Academic.
TV show?
Yeah, and it's like think of Jeopardy, but harder than Jeopardy.
Oh,
for high school kids.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, it's like physics questions and history questions. And all this stuff is super obscure, and no one can get it unless you were immersed in an academic environment.
Like the smartest kid ever.
Yeah, and there are three kids on a panel, or I forget how many there were.
It's three kids to a show team. There are usually two alternates just in case one of those kids dies, gets sick, commits suicide. You never know. And then
kids these days.
That was before anti-bullying, so we had to deal with things. And
so the super tough environment, and here's this super cool guy I've just seen on stage. He's street and he's funny and he's smart.
Got the
but
nice
it turns
bathrobe.
out he is uber smart because he was one of the panelists on It's Academic.
I was, and even my own basketball team was shocked when I was valedictorian. When I say there was an eerie silence about the school, No one saw that coming.
They're like, bathrobe guy?
They
No.
were like, bathrobe guy. I was a bathrobe guy. In high school, I was that guy.
But you have a brain, so congrats.
Well, knock on wood, thanks to MTV.
A lot of hard work. Well,
It was MTV that educated
It was MTV.
you. So anyway, I met him on the street. Like, well, are you kidding? You were on It's Academic. I mean, I knew the history of It's Academic. So not only DC, but It's Academic, very, very cool. So I kind of just stayed in touch, and I would watch him on Instagram and some other stuff that he was doing. I go on YouTube and watch some of your stuff, and you're just involved in some very cool stuff. So we're very excited that you're here.
Thank you for having
yay. And you brought bathrobes for us as well?
I did not, but
And you get a bathrobe, and you get a bathrobe.
You get a bathrobe.
You also, when I look at you, you read as a black guy.
Sure.
Okay, but you're actually half black and half Iranian or Persian.
Half Persian, half Iranian. Yes, I am. And I speak it fluently. I read and write it fluently.
Wow.
I'm very knowledgeable
with
on
your
the culture.
yeah.
Well,
That's good.
And most people wouldn't know that just looking at me. The same way I'm in a bathrobe, I also have a master's in economics. I also have a law degree from Georgetown. You don't see these things when you look at me and you go, that's just the black guy in a bathrobe.
I like that. Like, this is the guy you'd meet, or see like on Bumble, and you're going, no, liar.
Right.
But to sit down and talk to you, I mean, obviously people could figure out you're a smart guy. I mean, I haven't got to that point yet, but I'm hoping during the show, the light bulb will go on.
I
I'm like,
promise you,
he's
E
as
equals
smart as
MC
Mark
squared.
says. No.
Now, I didn't know the other things. I didn't know you have all these degrees and stuff. So how did you somehow dodge all the academics and degrees and a world of law or whatever practicing? How did you end up on stage as a comic?
It's interesting how you think the two are mutually exclusive. In the modern world, the people that make you think the most about the world are comedians. Don't just look at fart jokes. Let's look at Louis C.K., Dave Chappelle, Chris Rock. Who makes you think of politics?
George Lopez.
There you go.
George.
My man George, Jon Stewart, John Oliver, Stephen Colbert. They are literally just comedians. And they have made us think and push the boundaries and the edge of what we think of as politics and social commentary alike. And that's really why I got into comedy.
Oh, that's a great point, and you're absolutely right. You feel as though, in fact, in the case of Jimmy Kimmel, you feel like when he came out against the repealing of ACA, of Obamacare, he actually was sort of a change maker.
He was.
So, and Oliver, of course, has that same. Actually, everyone you've mentioned in one way or another. But the way that John Oliver and Kimmel recently have sort of marshaled popular support for certain things by exposing it in a funny way on their shows, that is kind of wild.
It makes people feel entertained while being educated, and that's the best way. So I obviously wanted to get in on this action. I became a comedian. Also, no law firms would hire me in my bathrobe. It was the worst. I was like, why? Why?
I'm betting you got offers, but then when you show up in the bathrobe, it's kind of your last
They're
day.
like, that won't
true.
go over well in court, sir.
I was great in court, by the way. I just want to throw that out there. I was great in court.
Well, you had to be great in court. I'm sure you had a great presence.
That was more, I have this way of making things just seem logical and commonplace if you think about them from a different side, no matter what the subject matter, which Mark has been privy to because he's come to a show. Lisa, I invite you to a show. Please come, enjoy, relax. I'm at the Laugh Factory every Monday and Thursday at 10 p.m.
Oh, okay.
Shameless plug. So
all good. No, I used to be big into the comedy clubs from the Bay Area originally, which is how I know Saget and love Bob Saget as well, and George.
Is
and
that how you know
Crave
Bob? Yeah,
Schumann.
right.
What? No. There's
Okay.
Everybody knows Bob like that. No, there's so many great guys up in the Bay Area. I know from the old comedy days up there as well. And then down here, there's just something about, there's that love. I don't know, like comedy clubs. When I first moved to Los Angeles in the 90s from San Francisco, it was where I first was kind of like looking for a neighborhood group to hang with. Yeah. Because there's a family sense about comedy clubs and people who love comedy. And then there's these regular guys who are always doing the circuit at the Comedy Store and Laugh Factory and the Improv on Melrose. And,
exactly. Those are the big three.
Yeah, it's funny. I said to, I guess we all know a lot of people in comedy. Of course, Tehran knows a lot of people because he's in comedy. But I'm just saying that we know a bunch of folks and some named people have come up through the ranks and also some people who are just middles, they're middling around or whatever. And I always say I'm envious of what Lisa's talking about, which is the camaraderie. I wish I worked in a medium where there was more of a family sense, That's
the radio is not a family?
I don't think so. I mean, I really don't. I think it's a smaller family.
Go to your room. It is a family. What do you mean?
Not like performers, not like live performers.
Isn't because it's
I'm going to disagree with that. We need to hang out more. You want a hug?
You guys can hang out,
we're
but
radio
other
fam.
radio hosts probably don't
Well,
meet
can be
up. They
competitive.
don't even know what you look like.
It can be competitive, but I mean, comedians can be competitive as well.
Well, I was going to say that it's definitely a very unstructured family, and the competition is there. It is sometimes destructive. Comedians secretly hope that other comedians die so that they can have that stage time. And it should be more of a team sport, and it's not. And that is the truth that no one wants to talk about, no one sees. People don't realize the way Dane Cook looks at Chris D'Elia and vice versa. But it's definitely underlyingly there. Whether people want to admit it or not, it is there.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm sure there's plenty of people, David Spade, love Spade as well. Spade and Sandler, they're good pals, but they've worked together on so many projects together. So I'm sure, obviously friendships do grow out of, that the comedy realm.
Sure. And that's also a different time. That's a different time. Now, in general, most things are zero-sum games. People feel that I can only win if you lose. And that is something we see even in sports, where it is a team sport. We see the individual takes precedence for themselves over the entirety of the team.
Yeah.
And that's the mentality.
You need a hug.
Dang millennials. Dang you millennials, just ruining everything.
We all need a hug now.
Here's what is great about being a performer now, as opposed to the 80s when there was a comedy explosion and all the rest. What's great now is that you can do this. You can have a show. You can have a YouTube channel. You can have so many different platforms are available to you that just didn't exist in the old days.
Sure.
So I feel as though now the bad part of that is, well, there's so many that I can get lost in all that noise.
Exactly. It's oversaturated. Also, talent and achievement gets lost because it is oversaturated. So simply being on SNL, my friend Chris Redd is on SNL this season, and it's almost as if it's another credit, not the credit that it used to be.
Sure.
And so people get lost in the noise. There's a lot of white noise, not to be racist, but there's a lot of white noise in the world right now where you don't know and can't distinguish between what's really good and what's only good because it's real.
Okay, so now let me talk about you. You've got this half African-American thing, half Persian thing.
Yes.
And by the way, Persian was a term that I became aware of after the Iranian hostage thing. People who were from Iran.
Great reference. Thanks for bringing that up. Aren't we over it yet? Sheesh, people.
Let it go, Mark. Let it go.
Let it go.
No, I love
you
it
needed
because
a hug.
I thought we were getting back to I'm Iranian as opposed to the Persian thing was something that was used because everybody was so freaked about like anybody from Iran was part of the hostage conspiracy, That was back in the late 70s. And so for the 80s, it was everybody's Persian. And then I thought that was kind of beginning to swing back.
So in 79, there was the hostage crisis, and a lot of Iranian immigrants who were in the United States who had come for school did start using Persian because of the bigotry and backlash towards the term Iranian. However, at the same time, Persian is an ethnicity that's within Iran. It's the majority ethnicity.
I see.
So most Iranians are Persian, but not all. So all Persians are Iranian, but not all Iranians are Persian. There are different ethnicities. For example, you are in Burbank, which is next to the country of Glendale, which is Armenia, and there are a lot of Armenians in Glendale, and there are a lot of Persian Armenians, for example, who are not ethnically Persian, but they are Iranian Armenian. So that's just one of the reasons. But also Persian sounds cooler. It gets the girls, Persian hugs, Persian rugs, Persian cats.
It does sound cooler.
It does sound. It's like Persian Empire. I mean, they're just like, oh, were you in 300? No, but you can have this number. It's just the thing.
On stage, you know what, Lisa, on stage, do you still do this? When I saw you have the backpack.
The backpack is not on stage anymore.
You had to bury the backpack?
We took the backpack off because a lot of people don't let go of the Iranian hostage crisis thing. I had to get rid of the backpack.
No, I thought it was cool. You come on with this. It was red the night I was there. This red backpack. He looks like a little kid with a red backpack. And it's
then
funny.
He's like, he's going to kill us all.
No.
Hello.
I never even made the association that there was an explosive in it.
See, that's what kind of heart Mark has. And Lisa, I'm just shocked.
Hey, I'm Italian, Irish, and a Leo. So
that's all you have to say. That's all you have to say.
I'm ready for anything to happen, and I will handle it, and then I will kick the you-know-what out of you.
I've watched Gangs of New York like 52 times.
Those are my people. They're my people.
I understand.
All right. I got my own back. Yours, I'll have to see.
I understand.
Mark, we'll talk later.
So the backpack is gone now.
The backpack's gone. It's actually in the car right now. Mm-hmm. It is my purse of sorts. It's very inconvenient not to have a carrying case for men.
Yeah.
A satchel just doesn't do it. It's €2. I don't want to come off like a Swedish prissy.
And fanny packs are not happening.
They're not cool. We need to bring them back. They are so convenient.
They like redesign them though.
You're the guy to do that, maybe, Tehran.
I mean, I would hope so, but I think this is a task for someone like A$AP Rocky. If he started wearing fanny packs, everyone would start wearing fanny packs. Maybe Kanye. Someone, bring it back, please.
That's what I always say about people who live in New York, because in New York, in LA, you can throw your stuff in your car and you're going to the next thing. But in New York, you have to carry all your stuff out of the house that morning, and it's all the stuff you're going to need, like for the gym and for the change of shoes for the thing later that night and all that kind of thing. That's when those people really need a backpack.
I agree. It's stuff to carry. You have to listen. Women are not the only ones who have things. Okay, we have things too.
It strikes me then that you're so funny and there's a great energy about you, and yet you've had to swim upstream against all the twin towers of hate that this country served up, right?
I saw what you did there. Great.
Oh, with Twin Towers?
The Twin Towers, and I would go with I felt a sperm metaphor with swimming up. Even though you were probably going salmon, I was going sperm.
I must say, Twin Towers is out of my mouth before I realized it. Okay, that was a little too, But what I meant is you had to swim upstream against these two things, like an African-American in a country that's still got racial issues, right? And Persian in a country that all of a sudden, 1979, has issues after the Iranian hostage crisis.
Well, also after 9/11. 9/11 was the second huge coming of that reinvestment in hate towards Middle East. And yes, that's actually one of the reasons that I do comedy, is to voice for the people that may not have the platform to be heard. If you really look at the root of everything, people are just people. It doesn't matter if you're black, white, brown, yellow, purple, whatever it is, whatever your religion, people are just people. And if we can just see that, if we can humanize one another, then maybe we can learn to love one another, or at least hate each other for a specific reason, not because of reasons that you are beyond your control.
Well, I mean, hate is such a strong word, though. I mean, after 9/11, I do remember feeling kind of in fear suddenly of anyone who might look from that descent. And I just remember one of the biggest, I don't know, it took a week or two to even just kind of get a grip about all that was happening, and just a changed world, really, that we were kind of awoken to. And should we live in fear and all these things that are happening? But I remember thinking those thoughts like in the elevator with someone who of color. And I remember thinking, you know what? I've been going to the gas station down the street here in Burbank for, however many years, since the 90s. And I love my gas station guys. And I remember thinking people were having those moments at 7-Elevens and gas stations where, it's more common that, certain types of people own those places. And
listen, we know brown people own gas stations. We know this. You don't have to be polite. We know it.
Well, I'm being honest. I'm just saying that I remember going to my gas station guys and saying, you're the same guys who've always been sweethearts. You're not even full service, and you help me fill up my damn tires, and you help me with anything I want. You
now show me where the bombs are.
And please don't kill me. No, I just had a moment with those guys, and I felt like being kind and having a moment talking to them, saying, I'm sorry, because I bet other people are being really awful to you right now because people are afraid. They just didn't know.
I don't hate you, but I hate all the rest of those guys.
I don't hate you. No, people hate the unknown. It's the fear of the unknown. It was a lot of ignorance and fear.
Of course. No, you're being very honest right now. You're saying that you succumb to that yourself.
And you're not the only person. I mean, it's just natural human instinct to do that. I mean, look at black people. We haven't gotten over white people in slavery, and it's been a couple hundred years. Honestly, that is a very realistic response, and a lot of people were afraid to admit that to themselves.
Kind of paranoid, too. I mean, for a little bit, and then...
There are times I feel afraid. I will get on a plane and see a guy and be like, uh-oh, not this guy, this bearded guy. And be like, I don't care if he's my dad. I don't feel safe. This guy's definitely got terrorists written all over him.
And then you got the drunk Italian-Irish girl going like, oh, yeah, we're going down. I don't know who's a bigger issue on planes, drunk people or people who, I don't know, it's probably a mixture of people who drink too much and act a little crazy. Yeah, I think it's just a matter of trying to educate yourself, but also just being kind. And, people, like I said, 7-Elevens, gas stations, areas that we frequent, these are people that we know.
Well, here's the difference. Here's what you're saying, I think. You're saying, I know these people personally, the people at the 7-Eleven and the gas, whatever. I know them personally, and because I know them personally, I don't put them in the same group as all the rest of these people. And that's the same argument, honestly, that racists have used through the years when they go, that black guy, no, that's my black guy.
I have a black friend. I have a black friend. And it's
what we all do.
Thing.
Right. It's an honest thing. It's a really honest thing because otherwise there's sort of a fear sold to you.
Of course.
And honestly, it's tough to push that back.
But there's a lot of money in fear. There's a lot of power in fear. There's a lot of control in fear. So it's understood, and I understand why I don't condone it, but I understand why the news does what it does, and the media helps progress this image. Why? Because it sells papers.
Some folks in the media
ratings.
can help perpetuate that, but that's what I love about radio. And that, I mean, I'm not talking about talk radio. I'm talking about, the kind of radio that I do, music radio, that is a little more fun and upbeat, but I don't perpetuate hate. I don't perpetuate anything that's going to instill fear in anyone if I can help it. And we've had so many heavy things happening just in the past few months. I feel like we've all been kind of humbled. I know we still have to deal with racial issues, but the hurricanes and the earthquakes and Vegas and now these fires in Northern California. I mean, it's like, my gosh, if anything, we need to be together now more than ever.
Well, you see those great images coming out of those places. They're viral. They almost look like they're staged, where like a black hand is helping a white hand, helping a Latino hand, helping all of these different.
Those are staged. There's just never a time where that group of people is ever just hanging out for no reason and then helping each other. Like,
you may be right.
That's just not even a realistic.
I totally bought it.
I wouldn't even help my own friends that are black, white, and Latino or Persian. I just wouldn't. I'm running.
At the Abbey on a Friday after lots of drinks, I don't know.
True. That's a good point. That makes a good point.
Must tell you it.
That's a thing.
The Abbey is it's a gay bar on some nights, but other nights it's not.
It's always gay.
It's always gay, but
always
sometimes it's girl gay or guy gay, but it's always gay, and it's very straight friendly. In fact, when I date, I like to make sure I do like the gay test on my straight guys, and I say, you have to come meet me at the Abbey. Like, I want to see, they have to be able to handle being kind to everybody, or they're just not my people.
Right. You don't want somebody recoiling from your gay friends.
No, you have to like all people, and if you
be
pass
careful though, Lisa. You're dating in L.A. You might take a man to the Abbey and then find out
he's going to ditch me.
Him.
Catching a cab alone.
He's been gone for hours. Where'd he go?
Where did he?
I was
Bruce.
I was dating a girl, and it was early in the relationship. Only been a couple of months, and she said, I really always want to go to a gay bar. And I wanted to prove that I'm like, hey, man, that's no
I can
problem.
handle it,
Nothing freaks me out about being at a gay bar. Baby,
Mark,
let's
are
go.
you about to tell us something here?
So yes. I go into this.
Hang on to your bathrobe.
It was a bar in West Hollywood, which is the big gay area here in L.A., and we parked and went in, and it looked just like a regular bar. I mean, it was,
that's how these things tend to look.
Honestly, I'd never been,
That's how they suck you in.
So everything was like their pool tables and big bar and blah, 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 blah. But they're all guys there. So we get these two spots at the bar, and we're ordering beers, and we've had a couple of rounds of beers, and then I got to go to the bathroom. And so I go to the bathroom.
It's on.
And I go into the bathroom, and I'm honest. There's a guy in a cowboy hat with no shirt on, and he's wearing like these, they look like lederhosen with like the butt cheek cut out or something. Like really, like a different, chaps. Thank you. That's what it was. They were chaps.
Oh, that's Timmy. Everyone knows Timmy.
And then there was some other guy there wearing some furry thing. Like it wasn't like a whole bear outfit, but it was furry. And then they said, because I was doing TV every night at the time, and one of them said, hey, Mark Thompson, how are you doing? I was like, and now here's the test of cool, because you can't say what? Oh, hey, man, I'm not.
You don't even have to say it. Yeah.
Right. But
I don't blame
trust me, Mark, I'm telling you. By your outfit, they already knew. Listen, they're dressed impeccably, even when they're undressed, whatever.
Yeah.
They saw you and they're like, straight.
He doesn't manscape. He's wearing jeans. Ew.
Yeah, you're right.
They knew.
Right.
They knew.
Well,
but God bless you for going and being open.
Yeah. Good for you. And I wish more people would
But when
do
I went
that.
down on the one guy, it did not, because I do it like a straight guy.
Well, that's
the problem.
Well, you had to prove that you're not gay.
Yeah, thank you. I want you to see how bad I am at this.
Yeah, of course. That totally makes sense. I live in West Hollywood. Happens to me at least 3 times a night. And I have to always prove how gay I'm not.
You don't have to like it. You just have to do it.
Again and again and again.
Right.
And again and again.
Sorry, listeners. There you go. All right. Where were we?
We were talking
gay bars.
About all of that hate.
Sure.
Oh, we're going to go back to hate.
No, but
that's why I do comedy, is to make light of this. Comedy and tragedy, it's a fine line. That's the concept, right? So when you look at these sentiments, we can either handle them with laughter or handle them with tears. And if we can make everyone laugh and see each other's perspective and side and understand one another, we will eventually learn to like and hopefully love one another. Same way Lisa has a brown gas station guy that she loves. And because of that, she doesn't want to deport all of us. I appreciate brown gas station guy.
I'm kidding.
Thank you.
I'm kidding.
Just like how Mark had a gay, anti-gay experience.
Yes.
And now because of that,
Right.
he's not as afraid of Brian the Bear and Tiny Cowboy Tim. That's the beauty
get
of
their
the
numbers
world.
at least?
Thank you
Come
for
on.
bringing it all home,
Well, no, and
Tehran.
that's
exactly
why I
it.
think people love really good comedians, and it sounds like you are, because it's that mixture of being smart, but also, I mean, obviously you're using your life experiences. Comedians to make you think in a way that, but they also kind of make you feel better because they're there to make light of it. It makes you feel like, all right, he's not taking this too seriously. Maybe I could do things a little differently. Maybe, it just makes you think, but it makes
Yeah,
me
but
feel
mostly
like
you just want to
chance at
laugh
love.
when you go to a comedy club.
But
I
it's
want it
not
all.
about
It's a
that.
mixture. It's a mixture.
Good comedians make you laugh, but great comedians make you think. So the best response to a joke isn't ha 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 ha. It's that's so true. That's so true, or oh, that's so true.
He gets me. He gets it.
That's a validation, and as human beings, we all seek validation of sorts. That's why we like groups. That's why we long for partners. That's why we need love. We need validation, and that's what a great comedian can do: is restructure the way you think, open your mind to different ways of thinking, or validate the way you have your thoughts.
So the girls in comedy, the whole world of your social world exploded once you were on stage. Versus, I'm talking about your law background and all.
I was actually way more popular when I didn't do comedy. In DC, I was a king. It's just in LA, which is a city of people who are too big for their own cities to come here. You get lost in this shuffle of pond, and I've been very fortunate to have I wouldn't use this, but variety might. It's meteoric rise in comedy.
Yeah, you're really a rags to riches story.
I wouldn't say that, but it's when
you're
so good looking and funny and humble.
You're the whole package.
It's hard.
Yeah.
But
it's hard to
humility is
deny the obvious.
my favorite quality of mine.
Yeah.
So
Your favorite quality of yours is you?
It's exact, and that's how I feel. That's the most wonderful thing, and that's what comedy ultimately comes down to, is trying to be the ultimate you. So we see people on stage who become this at times, if not throughout a career, whether it's Seinfeld or Chris Rock or Dave Chappelle.
We went to Chappelle I want to say 2 months ago, maybe it was, in Las Vegas, and the weirdest thing, I'd never had it happen before. This is right after his Netflix specials and stuff, which were hilarious. I mean, his Netflix specials, I think we've mentioned it on the show before, completely different. Like you do 2 hours, it's completely different. As you know, that's a lot of material.
That's a lot of material.
Anyway, before the show started, you had to take your cell phone, and it was taken from you, or it was put in a locked, little pocket almost. It was impossible to get it out, or to photograph, or to record through it, right? I'd never seen that before, and I guess that's being done more and more sort of to protect material.
That is a big part of venues and concerts, and definitely comedy shows, because especially with comedy, it's very sensitive. With songs, it's very easy to know who sang a song and when. But with comedy, because it's the concept of ideas, and there is no copywriting just an idea, people tend to remix your material, if not just openly take your material, or parallel thought happens and you have to be the one that gets there first and gets it famous first. So it's always a race. That goes back to the competition, competitive nature. So the concept with it is Chappelle has ideas and he doesn't want them out until he puts out another special, because this is his bread and butter.
Sure.
And as far as people go, well, I've heard that before. He said that before. Well, you're writing. It's like any other writing gig, right? You wouldn't expect a singer to go on stage and sing a brand new song each time they got up. With comedians, it's very similar. The better the comedian, the more songs you have, but they're still written material.
Their shtick, like their shtick. They're kind of their regular thing that we expect from them, and then they expand on that.
And you also, I would say, just one other thing. When you, and you know this is true, when you hear a comic do a riff on something, I want to hear him do that riff again. If I go to the Laugh Factory and I say Tehran doesn't do the bit about being pulled over by the cops and his dad's in the car or whatever, I want to hear him do that bit. That's one of the reasons I've come out tonight. So I don't always want him to have new material all the time. It's like a musical artist.
Oldies, classics.
Your favorites.
Right.
Yeah,
Give me, play me a couple of the songs that I know, and then you can play some of the other stuff too. It's a little different in comedy, because in comedy, it feels more like a conversation, or feels more like someone's, so you don't quite have that aversion to new stuff the way you do in music a little bit, you know?
But Mark, can I ask, when you go to comedy clubs, are you, because I find there's really only, there's two categories. There are the out loud laughers, or I'm I'm a very open, again, Italian Irish. We use our hands when we're talking. I'm very boisterous and this and that. But when I'm at comedy clubs, it takes a lot to get me to laugh out loud. But when I'm really laughing, I'm really in it. But I'm not necessarily I'm not that person.
No, I'm a good laugher. It makes me feel so good to be. I think comedy clubs are my favorite thing more than even music. Like I'd rather go see a great comic than U2 or whatever it is.
Yeah, concert. But you're an out loud laugher.
I'm an out loud laugher. And then did I do this? This is kind of a. I feel like bad about doing this. So you tell me now. This is great that you're here because I can ask you as a comic whether you. Sometimes a comic will make a reference or you'll make a reference on stage, and I think it's really clever. And I think I juice my laugh a little bit to let the comic know, hey, I get that. That is fucking funny. And the rest of the house may not. The rest of the house may not respond quite as hotly.
We appreciate that, Mark. Thank you. As comedians, we listen.
So what? That's you. That you're like, oh, he gets me. That one guy in the back.
Because sometimes references can be obscure. Sometimes they can be generational. As far as generation goes, everyone in this room should be familiar with Three's Company. Now, I have a little sister who I was watching Three's Company and I was laughing. And I'm only one little step above that, right? But I was like, she couldn't fathom why this is funny. And I said, it's funny. Look, they're dynamic. And they were in one of those situations where they couldn't find each other. They just couldn't. They were really close to one another, but couldn't find each other and kept going in different rooms. And my sister's response was simply, why don't they just call each other? Because she never grew up in a world where she did not have access to a cell phone. And so sometimes these references can be dated generationally, even though they make sense to a majority, it's not to all.
Right.
And that happens. And it's nice to know that Mark Thompson gets it.
Aww.
Thank you,
well, that's
Mark.
good. Just in general, thank you.
Does.
I think that.
Thank you.
Well, at least
I tried to start a slow clap, but shy Lisa didn't jump in, held it in like her chuckle.
No, I was like I was inner clapping.
No.
So what are the kids talking about now, Tehran? I feel like you're my
kids
what are they into? You're with them. I feel like that's the stream that you swim in.
There's two topics. Either it's stuff that's modern day, social, political commentary. Trump is a hot topic right now, obviously. Race, kneeling, Kaepernick, that kind of stuff. Or there's this entire new form of comedy, alt comedy, that comes out and talks about the most obscure, random things you could possibly think about. And that's all they talk about. They don't even touch on any of these subjects. And if they do, it's in a very interesting, weird, dynamic way. So those are the two schools. And of course, you still have your standard stand-up people who've been around, and they don't like either one of us so much. They do not. They don't. The standard comedians typically dislike alt comics.
Now, do you do alt comedy as well?
I do a little more. I feel like
your stuff is a little topical.
Social commentary, topical things. I do not touch on alt comedy as much, except for the concept that I wear the bathroom, which in itself is actually social commentary. It's the concept of I'm simply comfortable and it's throwing people off. I was at the Beverly Center one time and the security guard came to me and said, "You're not allowed to wear that here." And I was like, why? It's like, this is inappropriate. And then I pointed at a young lady who was wearing very short shorts with a very nice butt in a very gender neutral way. And I was like, she's allowed to wear this. It's a halter top and short shorts, but I'm not allowed to wear this. He's like, no, it's inappropriate. That's a house coat. And I said, so if I took this off, in which I would be wearing less clothes, you would find it appropriate then? And he had to say yes. And I said, I'm just going to keep it on.
I want to talk to your manager.
That's exactly what I did.
I mean, if he's going to like the route of the trench coat and think then fine, frisk me.
Exactly.
Frisk me. You're afraid there's weapons in here? Frisk me.
There's nothing inappropriate. And then people do this. And we do this all the time.
I should frisk you right now. I should frisk you right
Please, now. Please, Lisa, you can frisk me anytime.
She said that to every
Mark,
guy who's come in.
I just want to make sure we're safe
today.
Mark, you're next. No.
Anytime you can frisk me, as long as I can get ahead. I hope this was a Harvey Weinstein proposal. If not, I took it totally the wrong way.
Hey, I got no movie deals from that guy. He was a liar.
By the way,
that was very funny. So the concept is, for example, when women wear bikinis on the beach, perfectly fine. Everyone's walking around. They're at the beach. But if you saw the same girl in her underwear, which is the exact same articles and garments of clothing, would be very uncomfortable, freaking out. Like, what? Oh my God, stop. Would call the police because you're stalking them in their bedroom, whatever. The point is, the concept is, it's just social programming. We're all programmed to think things, to wear things, And we can break that. We can honestly fix the world if we all just decided to do so.
You know, when I was coming up, when I was a young man, Tehran, you were you were busy doing It's Academic in Washington, D.C., but I was in the 80s when the comedy explosion hit, right?
Sure.
And then I was in San Francisco, and all
Golden
the guys
age.
came up. Well, I mean, Dana Carvey and Kevin Pollak and
Ellen
Rob
DeGeneres
Schneider
back
and
in the
Ellen
day.
DeGeneres
Loved
is a
her.
friend. I mean, I just bumped into her, and now she's at that place where I feel like she's going, gosh, Mark, please don't recognize me. Please don't come over here.
Again.
But
don't
I
say
do.
hi
I would
again.
go, Ellen, hi. And then Joe, this is Portia. I go, hi, Portia. But at that time, there was something going on, and it was that the comedy that was associated with like dick jokes, that was considered ruining comedy. And they get big laughs, dick jokes, right? But
Who doesn't love a dick joke?
But you know what? You know what I'm talking
depends on the
about.
dick.
Explain what I'm trying to say, and then I'm asking you: has that kind of went away though, and it got lost in a wash of just comedy? I think. Or,
No, comedy has always been ran away by hack and hacky jokes. And so when comics are connoisseurs, they're snobs. They are comedy snobs, and they think only their sense of humor is the best, and the mass population, the pop culture doesn't get it. So when they hear something that works, but it's crude or simple, they're not going to buy it.
I see.
They need complex. They need extraordinary. They need something that just blows your mind, which is why even though Kevin Hart is the most popular comedian on the planet, he's not the most popular comic with comics because they just say it's too simple. There's nothing special.
Well, he's
Even
doing
though
more of the
I think
acting stuff too. So
he's very special. I mean, his personality is larger than life without this recent controversy, but it's just he comes off as this approachable, attainable.
you mean
amazing
cheating?
guy.
Sorry.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
Allegedly.
Allegedly, please.
Okay, I didn't extort him.
Cheating.
We don't know what happened.
Oh, because he forced her to do it, and she. Oh my gosh.
Well,
We
what
don't
happened,
know
for
what
those
happened.
who don't know, Kevin Hart, well, he's been married and his wife's pregnant, and then this video was released of him having sex with another woman.
Wasn't released. It wasn't released. They don't have the video. We just have heard the video. Someone tried
They
to extort
canoodled.
him
They both admit it.
of the
Doesn't matter.
video.
But
But he
nobody,
came forward
The extorting
and
is.
apologized.
He came forward and apologized.
Sure.
Doesn't matter. He still did it. The extorting was they still did it. So it takes two to tango. Right. How do you not know the guy's married with a pregnant wife? And so
when he
it's like,
posted every day, but it's his responsibility, not hers. I'd never blame when people love blaming the side woman.
I blame both. No, I blame both. It takes two to tango.
But it takes a man to be responsible for his own actions. And
Because
so,
he got caught.
as a man,
Because he got caught.
regardless, and
Sorry, that's my
unfortunate.
opinion. That's my opinion.
He should have never been
caught.
caught. No, it's unfortunate
He
he
never
was
did
in
it.
that position to begin with. As a man, we can be in self-control. That is the concept of humanity. We are not animals. We do not have to give into our animalistic instinct. My natural inkling is to go out there and impregnate every single
But you're
attractive
not
woman
married.
in the world.
No, but he's talking
I
about
still hold
instinct.
back.
He's gotta
My
hold that
instinct,
back.
married or not, I still need to be responsible for my actions.
Of course, and especially add fame to that. You got all these star blankers who are out there,
Sure.
and they're just like, oh yeah, he's got money, he's got this, and
Oh
nowadays,
my God! I'm sure that she was the third one that day. I mean, and Kevin, apologies.
Let's allegedly.
Mark's
Can
like,
we start using words
can
like
only
this? Is where
imagine.
law school
I
comes
used
in.
to.
Allegedly.
Nice to have a lawyer in the room.
Okay.
When Mark was the voice of Fox, so it was probably what you were like 4 a day.
I used to play cards with Kevin Hart twice a week, so I know I'd see him all the time for hours and hours. And I always said to him, "You're the funniest guy in any room." He's got that way about him where he takes over a room, you know. But as I watch his career grow, I mean, I just think that it's very hard, to your point, to exercise self-control. Everything is being done for you.
Sure, of
everything
course.
is being given to you.
Oh,
It is
it's
difficult.
So hard to
No,
be.
I think it's
Kevin
hard. I'm not.
So
I'm saying it's
hard.
difficult.
And this is where comedy
Surround
comes to
yourself
play.
with good people to help you be strong and do
Sure.
the right thing, or don't get married and go bang everybody.
But this is the
I'm not gonna
concept
hear
of seeing the other side. This is
I'm not
something
gonna feel sorry for anybody.
a young lady who's in a Kevin Hart-esque position told me, who shall remain nameless since we don't know how to use the word allegedly on this show. She explained to me that when or if she gets in that situation, it's not like she's going around in regular relationships like the rest of us regular people, just hooking up with the, local guy at the Rite Aid. No, these are the alphas of the alphas. And in case of the women, they are the prettiest of the pretties walking around with charm and sexuality and power.
Add alcohol and there you go.
And you add alcohol, which is also why I've never drank, smoked, or done drugs. Not only can I not afford them, I can't afford them morally either.
Yeah, what they do to you. Yeah.
Exactly.
Are you being real right now?
I'm being very honest.
That's so smart.
And a lot of comedians don't.
Problem.
So people like Dane Cook, who you would think drinks all the time, does not drink. Chris D'Elia does not drink.
Wow.
And
all the drinking that Dane Cook's not doing, I'm doing.
But these decisions, and it's unfortunate that Kevin, especially Kevin Hart, who was embroiled in a cheating scandal once before with his first wife, going into the second relationship, is just unfortunate because it does hurt his career. It does hurt his career because we want him to be great and lovable. And we wouldn't feel the same way if it was 21 Savage or Drake or some rapper doing these things, because that's not what they put out there. It's because Kevin came out with this, I'm a wholesome family guy. I've atoned for my mistakes. Look at my beautiful pregnant wife. We just got married. I love her so much. She's so great to my kids.
The moral of the story, don't let your man go to Vegas without a team around him.
He had the team. It's the team that filmed him.
And the team that probably drank and failed him.
You need two teams. You need one team for your husband, the team to keep an eye on the team.
And it's unfortunate because I also have a friend who's on Kanye's team, right? Kanye West. And we've all seen the psychological downfalls of Kanye in the recent years. And one thing he told me is, I make $350,000 a year to say yes to Kanye. If I say no, I will get fired. What do you want me to do?
Right.
And that happens too.
You're hired to be the yes people.
People are sometimes, they can be. Now, Kevin Hart is a wonderful, nice person. You know
I like
this.
Kevin Hart.
He's a
great.
terrific
No,
guy.
he's just such a sweet guy. This is the guy that shakes your hand, just goes around. But it's sometimes hard because you're used to getting everything you want. It's hard to stay grounded. It's at times hard to stay grounded.
I was doing an interview with someone.
Cheating happens everywhere.
His whole thing, once we started, was, I'm so excited. This will allow me to do a series of some more time with my family. I'm going to really redirect my time that's not spent on the series to family, my wife and kids. It's a really exciting time in my life. And the phone rings. It was one of those little cell phones. I remember, like the Motorola type.
Hey, baby.
The Nokias that had the flashing lights.
And he says, excuse me, during an interview, he goes, yeah, I'm doing this thing right now. I'm doing an interview,
And I'm doing you next.
Yeah. Okay. I'll call you when I'm done. Puts it over on the table and he leans into me and he goes, bitch, I meant on the plane.
It's real.
I think it speaks to, it's very difficult to push back on all of these different people when your natural drive as a man is this sexual thing.
But I love this topic because it's very real. It's not just the natural drive as a man. It's also the natural drive of a powerful man. Because to a lot of men, sex is a form of power. It's also an insecurity of men where we need that justification from outside sources. So
That's
it's not
very
just,
true.
I feel good about me. It's, I have a big car and everyone looks at me. Gold star. I have a big house. Gold star. I have lots of money. Gold star. I have a hot chick. Gold
back
star.
to me.
Gold star.
Look how cool I am.
Exactly.
No, but it comes from an insecure place.
Look how cool I am. And it's unfortunate, but it's also a form of power, which is why guys engage in sexual activities the way we do. It's, this is mine, right? Or let me beat it up. Or like, what has that vagina ever done to you? But that's the concept. It's just...
You looked at me weird when you said that.
Oh, wow. I felt like your vagina might have done some things to some people, if you must know.
She's got stories. If these walls could talk.
I'm sure. I could see you just being a heartbreaker.
I just think it's hard when you're an athlete, when you're a rock star, when you're out front, even when, I have to say, when you're a performer on stage at the Laugh Factory, not kidding.
Of course.
Why are you so like wimpy on this topic?
I'm not wimpy. I think
because we're guys and we want to justify
it. Feels so bad.
Here's the thing. Cheating on a girl is not the worst thing that a guy can do to a girl.
What is it?
It's not. Cheating on a girl is not the worst thing a boy can do to a girl. Making her feel worthless is the worst thing. And so if cheating makes her feel worthless, then that's why it's the worst. But the act of physically cheating is not the worst. It's not good. I'm not.
Well, women will say
emotional
cheating is worse than physical cheating.
Of course, because of what it means. And so that's why we have to be, a lot of people are disrespectful the way they cheated. What Kevin Hart did and it being publicly acknowledged is disrespect. What Kobe Bryant went through with his situation, whether it happened or not, I don't know. But the finality of it was that it was at the very least cheating. That is publicly humiliating. What Tiger Woods did is publicly humiliating. No one likes that feeling. It makes the vernacularly me feel worthless as a
Your
woman.
scumbaggery was exposed.
It was, and that's unfortunate. But at the same time, people are grown-ups, and if they have a conversation and they know what it is called a blow job. For some people, it is a career. And so I don't judge people. It's between a relationship. But when you have a public image of wholesomeness, then don't put rape drugs in people's drinks ever, but especially not when you're Bill Cosby. That's the thing. It's
or
even
CeeLo
worse.
Green?
Or CeeLo. Or CeeLo. CeeLo, that happened as well.
Yeah.
And I mean, don't.
What did CeeLo do?
CeeLo put a rape drug, a Molly, in a girl's drink and then took advantage of her and had to go to court and came up with these outrageous excuses about it. And while CeeLo Green as an artist is great, as a man, he's a piece of shit. Like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate because we buy, especially when it comes to someone like Bill Cosby, who was a hero of mine, who every black kid in this country saw Bill Cosby as their father and Felicia Rashad as the mother. I don't care who they were.
The Cosbys.
The Cosbys were everyone thinks that when it comes to President Obama being elected, Martin Luther King had a lot to do with it. I'm sure there was something to do with it because obviously civil rights is an important part, but it was more so things like the Cosby Show and the Fresh Prince, the acclamation.
The idea of this.
Exactly. Just being brought into your homes
Perfect
night
American
after
family,
night.
yeah.
Exactly. And so when Bill Cosby does something like this, it's just not only it's despicable because of who you are. It's one thing when, for example, we have like the worst thing you can do is pedophilia. And if the pedophile is some random stranger, we look and we're like, we should have protected our child better, but you're a bad person. That is disgusting. But it's worse when it's a teacher, pastor, neighbor, friend, family member. The trust factor. And as a public image, you have put out trust. You have put out trust. And when I trust you, don't break that trust. You are now a symbol. You are more than just yourself.
I'm gonna give you the slow clap.
Oh, that's
and
very
then
nice.
we're gonna say, don't trust the guy in the bathrobe.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm in a bathrobe. When I do stuff, it's like that. Why do you think I wear that? It's like, I'm like,
creepy guy in the
why?
bathrobe can't be trusted.
What were you thinking?
It's like you were asking for it.
Into
I do
this
a lot.
kindergarten class.
I do some mentoring. I do a lot of speaking. And
Yes, you do.
And I'll tell you what I tell all girls, and I would tell my little girl this. No boys. No boys. Boys are trouble.
How old is she now, Mark? How old?
How old is what?
How old?
How
well,
old?
no, this daughter.
I don't have a daughter.
You're saying like figuratively, though. Is that what you're saying?
I give that advice to anybody. I give that advice to a
Any young
40-year-old girl.
He's saying it to everyone. And I want to expound on that is when you're giving the same award to a boy, also say, don't be quote unquote a boy. See, one thing we don't do as a society is hold our boys responsible. We always say boys will be boys, and it's almost as if in some ways it's the girl's fault. It is not. We need to raise our sons and tell our brothers that they need to be responsible and held accountable for their own personal actions. And it doesn't matter.
Same for the girls.
You are in control. Sure, but we've been blaming girls for a long enough time.
Yeah, his point is a good one because if you have a runaround guy, you go, oh, what a stud. Look at he's like
Exactly.
nailing forward. But if you have a runaround girl, it's
The
like
old
that
cliches,
whore.
yeah,
No, but it's
exactly.
true. So I'm just saying we do give guys a pass on a lot of stuff.
We give guys a lot of pass. Whenever a situation occurs, we even first acknowledgement that we give whenever it's a celebrity, he didn't rape her, she wanted it. That's just unanimously
I think those
what we
things
say.
might be changing, though. I have an 8-year-old goddaughter, and boy, I feel like I want to take her to karate as soon as possible.
Just don't take her to pole dancing class.
No, of course not.
You
Although-
say, of course not, but
Just
Hey, they can make a good living.
a good living, a great living. Strippers are winning. They are winning. The Cardi B, the most successful female rapper right now, was just a stripper who became a rapper. I mean, they are winning.
Is that the goals we're striving for now?
That's
from
just-
well,
bathrobe
success.
guy?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's it.
By the
Cheers
way,
to that.
Crackhead, you're still probably a good dad, but stripper? That means society won and you had no influence or effect on your own daughter.
Okay, we're talking after the show.
Okay.
Okay.
I would say that if you put
We're gonna
your
have a sit down.
goddaughter in karate, just be careful, as this karate instructors can be trouble too. I was reading some
Oh, no,
stuff
I will
on
be
them.
there watching the entire
Yeah.
freaking time.
You feel like there's
Trust.
no safe place to drop off your kid anymore. That's the problem.
No.
That's the thing. We're all so afraid, and that fear is what's driving everything. Money, war, racism, bigotry, everything. The root of all of it is fear.
That's why we have to empower ourselves and empower people.
That's a really good, but you empower yourself with information. I mean, there are things that are legitimately
and fighting back.
The things that are legitimately things that should engender fear in you, and then there are things that are engendering too much fear in you. Right? You have to at least know those things to be scared of. You can't be scared of everything. You know,
right,
my
there's
girlfriend
some things you can control
listens
or not
to
control.
my girlfriend listens to those podcasts that are all about murder. Okay?
The whole point of this was to let us know that Mark has a girlfriend. I just wanted to let you know.
My hypothetical girlfriend.
What's this one's name?
Listens to. I call them all Jane.
Brilliant.
So she's so scared of everything because she listened to these murder things where everybody's getting poisoned and they're break-ins and they're getting
her phone.
No, and so what happens is she comes home, like I leave the doors all open. She comes home and she locks everything up. And I live in a place where I like the breeze coming in.
Are you still up on the hill?
She's still, she's frightened.
This house is beautiful.
So Tehran, we'll get some girls up there.
Of course, James. We'll get some James.
We'll get some James.
We'll get some James, and I'll bring you a bathrobe
fill the hot tub with macaroni and cheese, and get the thing going.
Wait,
but
what?
The point is,
it's freaky for both of us.
You got to know what to be afraid of. Is my point. Where can people keep up with you? You're in a lot of different places. I know that you do a show about the show Empire.
I do a show about the show Empire. The pre-show was the after show. I'm a lot on Fox, the network, not the news station. I am Comedy Central. I'm just around.
What are you on Instagram? I'm going to follow you on Instagram right now.
I am Tehran, literally at I am Tehran, IAMTEHRAN, like the capital of Iran. My name is the capital of Iran.
Spell it one more time.
So if you don't know how to spell it, just watch CNN on any given day and you will find it. It is IAMTEHRAN as in Nancy. I am Tehran.
Okay, now, on a scale of 1 to 10.
10.
In America, tell me where I don't want to call it hate, but I'll call it hate.
Sure.
On the hate scale, where are we on a 10 scale? Black or Middle Eastern?
This is a great question, actually. Overall, in America, the United States of America, right now, racism is at a 7. A lot of people would swear that it's at a 9. It is not. However, just a couple years ago, it was at a 5 or a 6, which is exponentially a lot less. Now, why do I say 7 and not 10? Because slavery and lynching was a 10.
Sure.
So when we see police brutality, this is the best it's ever been. This is not the worst. 20 years ago, it was much worse. Crime was the highest in the 80s going into the 90s. We're at the best when it comes to crime. We're at the best when it comes to police cases, it's just unfortunate that it still happens and it's 2017. But I guarantee you that during the breathing days of Jim Crow, the just established days of Jim Crow, it was 100 times worse. So let's remember that we are getting better. But just because it's getting better doesn't mean it's good enough. We have to always be better. And the problem is so many people are so willing to change the world, and so few people are just willing to just change themselves. So start with you. Look inside, and you want to know who to blame. 9 times out of 10, just look in the mirror. And that's how it goes. And right now, I would say that attitude reflects leadership. And in my comedy, I actually do not talk negatively about President Trump. He's not my president. I'm a United States citizen. He's my president. It's just not the president that I would have chosen if I had a choice. But then again, I don't know who I would have chosen. Could President Obama just done the rest of the terms? I mean, I just liked his character.
At least he said the right thing.
Yeah, at least he said the right stuff. He just acted like the right guy.
Right. Politically, now give me the scale on Middle Easterners, and I mean, I feel like almost you're a stealth Middle Easterner because you don't. Again, as I said at the beginning of the program, you don't look like the guy Mohammed who's going to get pulled over.
I look like Terrence Howard's cousin.
Right.
That's the thing.
But still, you have a window on this stuff. So
because especially because I can hear it, I can see it, I can be next to it, and no one knows. So on Middle Eastern people, it's actually at something like an 8, 8.5. And the reason being is because it hasn't gotten better. It's created, and now it's at the all-time high. It is much worse. So with Middle Eastern people, 8.5, maybe even approaching a 9.
Wow.
And that's the truth. And it's because it's relative to where it was, and I see it increasing. and people are so blatant about it. And that's when you know that there is no fear. When you start being blatant about racism, you're basically saying everyone else agrees with me too.
That's right. When you don't have to look around, you're saying, before you let
And
fly
I'm talking
with
to
something.
Lisa, by the way, just to let you know.
No,
I'm speaking directly and
not
looking
like
at Lisa.
that. It's not like that.
I'm sure Rajiv at your local gas station disagrees.
I love him, and that's not his name.
Okay.
He helped me with my tires again yesterday. I love him.
She doesn't know his name, let's be honest. All right, but Lisa, I want to thank you for being here today.
Are you sure?
I love it.
No.
I love it. It's great to have another member of the iHeart family here, but also...
like the family in air quotes.
Well, it's not the family
We
that you
are a
have
family.
as performers in comics. I do think have a better family.
Come on.
But I've known you for many, many years.
I've known you for a long
I'll tell you
time,
this
and
last
I
thing on the
adore
way,
you.
and we have to finish up, but Lisa was teamed with Ryan Seacrest in the beginning, like when he was starting his radio career.
Oh, now I have credibility.
What happened to you, buddy?
Yeah.
Credibility. I'm like, oh, sheesh.
No, honestly.
Where would he be without me? No, I'm kidding. Hi, Ryan. Love you. I'll call you later. Huh?
No, and then he moved to Kiss FM and
To take over for Rick Dees.
took over for Rick Dees, and Lisa got a show of her own that way because, Ryan wasn't...
After I had to pick myself back up together. No.
Well, let's be honest.
I
He
love the
did.
guy.
All right, there's not room in the car for you, Lisa. I'm on my way to Kiss FM.
No, it was taking over for Rick Dees. Those are big shoes to fill, and it was a bummer because he knows I adore him. I mean, and his family and our whole journey and 7 great years together. And
Oh, wow.
I just
The new
I love
morning
the
show, he
guy.
could have just brought you on.
There's some politics involved, but it's all good. Ryan and I we're good.
No.
That sounded passive aggressive.
Because I know we gotta go, and I
No. But we certainly don't have to go. You've got some
If
scoop
you have
on Seacrest.
if you have some Seacrest story.
I have a date, and I'm 10 minutes late for it.
Okay,
I
I'll
love
let you go.
both.
I'll let you go.
But
You have a it's still daytime.
I know, but I do early because I
She does
get up
happy
early,
hour. She
so.
does happy hour stuff.
See,
She
that's
likes to get the guys drunk early.
Let's just let them know
and then-
nothing's happening on this one, buddy. It's 4 in the afternoon. It's just
No, by the time I get to where I'm going, it'll be
All right.
6.
That's
Okay,
true, it's
so
all
I will just thank Tehran for being here. This is a lot of fun, and it took too long. Will you come back and visit again?
No, thank you so much for having me. Obviously Mark Thompson is amazing. Lisa, it's a pleasure meeting you.
Thanks.
I hope you don't think all of us are as bad.
All of you people.
All of
Oh,
us.
man.
Oh my
people.
gosh,
You want to know what's?
ridiculous.
I'm also half
You're a
Muslim, half
sweetheart.
Jewish. So let's.
Wow, we didn't even get to that.
That's
For
next show.
I can't
Next
believe I
time.
even said hi to you.
Next time. That's what I'm
Well,
saying.
happy Yom Kippur and
a sweetheart.
Chag Sameach, everybody.
When's your next show? I want to see you the next time.
Actually, every Monday, every Thursday at 10 p.m. at the Laugh Factory. I
we
have
should
my
go,
own show,
Lisa.
so-
Will you go with me?
What time though? You're on late.
10
See, it's
p.m.
late. It's at 10.
Oh.
So
Oh, too late?
Kinda past my
All
bedtime.
right, I'll take Ryan Seacrest. Hey, listen, it's been fun. Tehran, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, Tehran.
Woo! Bathrobes! Bring on the craze!
Pictures of
people.
Tehran in a bathrobe on our website, edge-show.com.
Mark, I love you.
I love you back.
There are other conversations like this. All of it's on our website, edge-show.com, or subscribe through iTunes or Stitcher or Overcast or any of these places where you can listen to cool conversations that date back over the 4.5 years that we've been on the air. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your support. I say it. I really mean it. I appreciate it. Until next time.